According to the states, many eligible voters lack ready access to citizenship documents. Oh, why is that? Because they're illegal? This likelihood of disenfranchisement is a serious harm. And maybe people don't. Do you have an ID form? Go get an ID form. Do you have an ID to get access to your gym? Denise J. Casper, another district court judge who's siding with illegals against safe and secure elections from a duly elected president. An Obama judge now changing the elections again. Doesn't want any proof of citizenship being presented. Trump came out and issued an executive order saying we're going to secure our elections since we've got millions of illegals in here, percentage of whom are absolutely participating in our elections, and we want to stop that. So Trump came out with an executive order, and then we had lawsuits fly in the aftermath. And this decision just came down out of guess where? Massachusetts. And we'll read through it quickly to see what the latest is on it. And we have heard from her before following this case along, was in office in 2010, been there for quite some time, went to Harvard, and is now saying, we are going to prevent you from checking status when you're voting in elections. And she's the first Black female judge to serve in Massachusetts. Historic, incredible. So here's what she came down with. All right, look, on March 25th, Trump issued an executive order. We remember, we're excited about it. Preserving and protecting American elections. And what this does is it requires the Election Assistance Committee and the Secretary of Defense to implement documentary proof of citizenship requirements with federal voter registration forms that must be used. So all the blue states sued. Arizona, which is purplish, California, Nevada, Michigan, Maine, Illinois, Delaware, New York, all of them. They sued. They said, we have to check to make sure people are citizens? That's going to wreck everything for us. We don't want to do that. So then after careful consideration, here's what the judge says. The court allows the state's motion to succeed, and Trump's order is stop. In sum, she says, the states are challenging the executive order, and their challenge is requiring the committee, the election committee, to take the appropriate action to require proof of citizenship. She says it's all appropriate, and I think the states are going to win. Here's why. The Constitution says states can prescribe the time, place, and manner of elections, which they all manipulated back during the COVID era. There's existing federal law called UOCAVA, Uniform Overseas, all the different voters, HAVA, NVRA, and more. She gives us a lot of the rules, right? So we call this like the rules section where she's just laying out all of the things that we're going to be discussing. She also brings up the executive order. It says specifically, documentary proof is what is in there. And so now we're comparing the executive order against all the laws, okay? Everyone sued. The states filed this action back on April 3rd, all the blue states, and now we have to decide whether there is a preliminary injunction. We got the four factors we talk a lot about now, whether they're going to win, irreparable harm, a burden, and public interest. And here we finally get to some analysis. She says, all right, while the consolidated matters before this court raise questions concerning the standing of the parties to even sue, she's going to find I've got standing. Also, rebutting the argument from the Trump people that this case is not ripe. Like, we haven't broken any laws yet. What's your problem? Why are they allowed to sue? They said, well, it's ripe enough, and they're going to win. She says, it is ripe. The critical question is whether there is something that I can resolve, and I think that there is. There is a hardship here, and so I can resolve this. Running statewide elections is difficult for them, and if they have to check status, that's going to be even harder for them. Now, as to the merits, other forms already exist, and when Congress enacted the law, it assigned the responsibility for the form to the EAC, right? So here's the background. HAVA, the form goes to the EIC, which they say is an independent and bipartisan panel, and it required the EAC to revise the form only if they have 3 people who approve of it. And Trump says, wait a minute, your argument is that we're trying to commandeer this, but that's not at all what we're doing. We're saying we want them to take appropriate action to. It's not a requirement, so it's just like a nudge. The executive branch also says that we have executive power, and when the EAC is operating, they are exercising executive power, and we have supervisory authority over this, so we're coloring within the lines. Now, the question is whether we can interpret this law to be more narrow through another clause, right? In other words, Trump, you don't have as much power as you claim to have. Going through all the different provisions and enumerating a bunch of laws, going through various sections of the executive order and what they're challenging, and just taking them one at a time, it looks like. Why it's such a long opinion. Now, the executive branch insists that states arbitrarily treat some people's votes differently when they permit absentee votes to come in, or illegal votes, right? If illegals vote, then that means your vote, your share of the vote is diminished. Now, even if the election day statutes could be read to bar states from counting ballots received after election day, civil enforcement actions have to go through a different mechanism, saying if you require proof of citizenship, there will be harm. The states have said that if you require citizenship, it's going to require a bunch of record-keeping problems, and it's going to take databases up to a year of new programming and other things. The states have also shown that they're going to have to issue guidance. We got to check IDs. We need proof of citizenship. How are we going to do that? In fact, in Maryland, the concurrent development of training materials would require 35 to 40% of its resources. If you have to check IDs, it's going to require 40% of our time. And the judge is going to say that's a significant harm for them. It's going to demand time and resources. The ballot receipts that they need to get will require they have to train a bunch of people. In fact, Cook County says we normally hire 8,000 people. They're all going to have to be trained. In Nevada, public education will mean newspaper notices, social media posts. Vermont, they've already begun outreach to people, but it's going to take a lot of time. And this is all going to be hard. There's going to be voter registration list maintenance, and it's going to disrupt already the crucial work that they're doing for the next election. And it's going to divert resources from other programs, and it's threatening them too. You're threatening to take away their federal funding if they don't do this. And so they're clearly being harmed. It says this is unquestionable harm to the states. According to the states, many eligible voters lack ready access to citizenship documents. Oh, why is that? Because they're illegal? Well, they can't get documents. I think that Kamala Harris said something like black people don't have the internet or something like that. Citizenship documents are also expensive. In Rhode Island, it's $165 to obtain a passport. Okay, do you need a passport? And the city of Providence, $22 to, that's what I'm saying, get a birth certificate. It's like $15 for a reprint. $22. Go get it. For this reason and others, we can't do that. Here you go. Saying that approximately 50% of Americans do not have a passport. Okay. 2/3 of black Americans lack a passport, and passport ownership increases dramatically with income. You don't need a passport. Go get a birth certificate. Some state citizens will face specific challenges with respect to obtaining proof. For example, in regions along Maine, many residents are citizens, but they lack proof of citizenship because they have a Canadian birth certificate and they don't have passports. Okay, well, then maybe they shouldn't be voting if we can't prove it. New Mexico has attested that its unique population and geographic dynamics, namely its remote villages, and 19 federally recognized Native American tribes are also remote, and they can't go get their documents. So we can't check anybody because some 17 tribes in New Mexico have a problem. Massachusetts has a significant student population, and students are too dumb, and most of whom will be registering for the first time, and they may not have their proof of citizenship status either. And so this likelihood, and you could also, right, go through this process. So like you could say, you'll do your validation when you get your driver's license. Okay, so provide your social, provide your, all your information. The MVD will validate, they'll give you your license. Great, you got your license and it's issued by Arizona. Then we can just presume that you're a citizen because we did a check on the back end. Do the same thing. In other words, you don't need to bring your birth certificate with you when you go to vote. You just bring your ID because the state has said that everybody who gets a driver's license, we're not going to give illegals driver's licenses unless you're California and other places. So if you have a driver's license and we don't give driver's licenses to illegals, then we've done the validation at the state level. So just bring your driver's license from Arizona. You don't need anything else. You drive. This likelihood of disenfranchisement is a serious harm. And maybe people don't. Do you have an ID form? Go get an ID form. Do you have an ID to get access to your gym? Says, or whatever you do? Yes, the executive branch questions the imminence of these harms, but the equities here say that Trump loses. The executive branch says we have a strong obligation to make sure we don't have rigged elections, but there's little evidence that you checking status is going to make sure we don't have rigged elections. She says the executive branch can use other tools and you don't need to check status. And so when there is an injunction that is issued, she says we're not going to require even an injunction bond. And so the Obama judge comes out and says for the foregoing reasons, Trump is now enjoined. Don't even have to post a bond. Doesn't cost anything to have illegals voting in our election. And nothing in this says that Trump can't take lawful action, but his executive order is now injuncted and is stopped. So another judge acting just as you'd expect, Judge Denise Casper. We're sure Trump's going to appeal it and hopefully get aggressive in this litigation to secure our elections because it's all interrelated. The illegals are here to seize control of the land, seize control of the judiciary, seize control of Congress, and reconquista their way back into America. And by having illegals not checked and voting in elections, that gives them another mechanism to do it. So Denise J. Casper, another district court judge who's siding with illegals against safe and secure elections from a duly elected president. We'll keep our eye on this one. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do.